Welcome back to another episode of the Strong Family Project podcast. I'm Joe, joined by Mel.
Welcome back to the Strong Family Project podcast. We guide you on the path to raising confident, independent, and resilient children in a strong family environment.
For everyone listening to just the audio, we're switching up the background today, having it by the Christmas tree, the stockings, the fireplace, which on the last episode, Mel busted my chops that is not lit, and it continues to be not lit. We're mixing it up. We're having a little fun during the holiday season, but we want to have an important conversation with you today on wrapping up your current year and starting to plan for your new year. Because the worst time to start planning is when you're already into it. And so we'll have some insights for you on that to wrap up this year, write down some bright spots, find what's working, start thinking about your new year. How are you going to set it up? What do you want to accomplish with your family? And how are you going to deal with obstacles along the way? And so if you have a plan for that ahead of time, the obstacles are much easier. It's the old Mike Tyson saying, Mel. Do you know it? Everyone has a plan to get punched in the mouth. Is that what were you really going to say that?
No, I knew the punched in the mouth part, but I didn't know the beginning part.
Yeah, so we're going to make sure you have a plan for even after you run into roadblocks, the proverbial punch in the mouth, not the literal punch in the mouth. But as we get into this episode, since it's a longer episode, we just had our 10-minute Tuesday. This is a full length. Mel, I'm going to start with a question, which is, what is your favorite part of this holiday season?
The first thing that comes to mind is getting the Christmas tree. Because for me, it marks the beginning of Advent and everything that leads up to Christmas. And I love Christmas lights. I even leave some up throughout the year. So for me, that's probably my favorite, at least initial aspect of Advent, of the holiday season. I try to get that tree in as soon as possible after Thanksgiving because I want to enjoy it as long as possible. And every time I walk into this room and see this insanely massive tree that is only decorated 3/4 of the way up because we couldn't reach any higher, it brings me a lot of joy.
We have this room with a vaulted ceiling, and it is one Christmas tree tall. If someone asks me how high the ceiling is, one Christmas tree that Mel and the boys picked out. This Christmas tree is pretty much touching it. We're close between the 15 and 20 foot mark, and there are ornaments from like 12 feet down because we can't get to the top, even with the 10-foot ladder, safely to be able to put it up so the star is about halfway down. We can't quite see it, even if you're watching the video. But it's fun. That is the initiation of the season, the decorating of the tree, the starting of all the music and all that. What's your getting started question?
Mine is, what is your favorite thing to do in the snow?
Would you say it all weird?
I don't know.
Added a little.
I have no idea.
Added a little flavor to that question. Okay. My favorite thing to do in the snow. I'm going to go two-parter. Number one is to drive a little bit so the truck slides and it makes you make noises. I grab the handles. So that's one of my favorite things to do. Get a parking lot, come around the corner a little bit hot when we're back up here in the mountain, just slide just a little, and Mel doesn't know if I'm doing it on purpose or not.
That's what I was going to say. Is my first thought is always, is he sliding on purpose or is this because he can't? I shouldn't say can't control the vehicle because he always can. But is it because it's on purpose or is it because there's a little bit of ice and it's causing some troubles?
So definitely the husband and wife game of making the truck slide around a little bit.
And the kids love it too.
Shifting out of the four-wheel drive, putting it in two wheels so we get like a good around the corner. And that makes...
Take a deeper breath just thinking about it right now.
Yeah, helps Mel work on her anxiety, I think. Just a little touch
My
of it.
reactions maybe. To not make too many noises or too loud of a
so
noise.
It's one thing, when the kids fall over and stuff, Mel used to always be like make all these noises, it would always make it worse.
Like the typical average person does.
Interesting. How we were taught to handle it in first responder class is to always remain calm because anxiety increases the heart rate and puts the person in danger if they are hurt. So the noises never help. So I get to help Mel practice her noises by driving. I'm not going to say aggressively. It's not. Driving excitedly.
Sure, and thank you for keeping my needs in mind. I'm sure that's exactly why you started doing that.
Happy to help. The second part of it is the challenges that come out of the snow. Hiking in the snow. Specifically, we do some challenges as a family. And I was on a hike this morning with our son Logan. Henry did a couple with me last week. We had to put on the micro spikes, climb up the mountain. We're the only footprints on the mountain. It's very hard. Hike is maybe 10 inches or so of snow coming over our shoes. He had boots on, fortunately. He was well dressed. I went with just a weight vest, no shirt, shorts.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought you at least had a t-shirt on.
No, I went.
Okay.
There's no one out here when it snows, so I can let it breathe a little bit. I'm not going to go popping the top when there's other people around on a popular Saturday or something like that in the mountain. But no, there's nobody else around because of the snow. Snow eliminates a lot of people from doing things. And so when we do it, the kids do feel special and they feel empowered and they feel more confident. They feel more resilient. And at the top of the mountain, I got to share a little story with Logan because where we used to live, there was a big snowstorm a few years back. And they did studies on it because people passed away, unfortunately, in the snowstorm. And what they had found is that people were in their cars and they're waiting for the snow to stop, parked within half a block of their apartments. And some of them ended up freezing to death because they didn't go out in the cold. Some people assume that if you go out in the cold, you instantly get sick. It's so dangerous. And so I didn't have Logan do it because he's a child, but to show him that it is doable and you will be fine. And so we went up a trail. We've gone up a bunch of times. People knew where we were. So we took some safety precautions, but I was well underdressed intentionally to show like, hey, if you got to go through something hard, like it's very possible. Your body's amazing. It can handle this.
Wow. I like that you shared that story with him. And it is true. We immediately put roadblocks in our minds to what we're capable of. And even if we know that something's possible or it's okay to go out, unless you are tested, you don't really know that you can handle it. So you're like testing him preemptively. So if he is in a situation someday, he already has this experience to fall back on.
About 6 years ago, I started swimming in our frozen pond. We used to have a pair of ponds behind our house. We'd take an axe, chop it open, hop in. Now, it wasn't for some this cold tub craze wasn't around. None of that was around. Wim Hof was around. I did some research on to see if it was safe or not, but I always believed if you fell through ice, you're dead. If you saw the famous Christmas movie, A Miracle on 34th Street, right?
I never saw it.
It's a Wonderful Life. Let me change. It's a Wonderful Life.
Never saw that.
You definitely saw It's a Wonderful Life. Colorized. My mom used to watch it all the time.
No.
But I don't remember if the main character or his brother had fallen through the ice and gone deaf in one ear. And that came up a few times throughout the movie. And one time when I was younger, I was walking on a lake, fell through, and just like up to my knee got wet. And all the adults panicked, threw me in a car, and they drove me to someone's house, and they put me in warm water. It was like a huge thing. And so the reason why I researched and started swimming in cold water is because I have two young sons, third one on the way. And we had a pond. Like the likelihood of one of those children having an accident around the pond is higher because we have a pond and we have kids. Mm-hmm. And so I've had to make sure I was comfortable with jumping in with no hesitation at any point to save a child. I can't run to the side and yell instructions to them while they're having shock from the cold. And so I had to experience it myself. So I decided to put myself through that so that I would know it's fine. They would know it's okay. It's not anything to be scared of, but it is to be respected. And trying to teach that and teach them resilience through that is part of the reason why I like the cold. It is just more challenging.
What's powerful too is that once someone does that and then it kind of spreads. Now, not everyone's going to just be like, hey, I want to try that, but you might inspire someone else. And we actually ended up having a little event at our house where we invited whatever gym member wanted to come and try it out, because it's not necessarily something the average person would just go seek out and do. And a lot of people showed up and we made it fun. We had a little bonfire going and some hot tea after they got out and everything. But I love the fact that because you started that, other people then were able to experience it just in case they ever need to know. That, just in case they're ever in a situation where they have to ask themselves, am I comfortable jumping in this water? They can say yes because they did it. But I don't think it's necessarily something that is sought out. And I don't know, I admire it. I did jump in with you one time. Mm-hmm. And so I have that experience to reflect on. And I feel like I should probably do it again.
Got to recertify.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's get into today's topic. Hopefully that gives you a little extra on the episode. So today we're talking about landing the airplane for 2023 and taking off successfully for 2024, specifically with your personal and family life. And Mel has some notes to share with you. A friend of ours, Vince, just did the business version of this, annual planning. We're going to do a very simplified version on where you want to go as a family. There is one resource we have for you. Actually, there's two resources we have for you. We have a free one at strongfamilyproject.com. We have the Strong Family Path laid out on a couple page PDF so you can see what 7 steps we follow with our family. And we didn't just implement them all at once. We progressively did it throughout a year. And so you can look at which ones you're doing well and which ones you want to do and start with one and work through it. The other resource we have for you is the book, the Strong Family Guidebook. It's on Amazon right now. Just go search Strong Family Guidebook. And it's discounted to $8.99 to make it super cheap and make this process very easy for you. The first half of the book is a little bit of a story on why this stuff's important. Second half of the book is the outline, and Mel did almost like worksheets and exactly how to implement the Strong Family Path with our family examples and a lot more content for you. It is tremendously worth it. If you skip the story that I wrote and go right to part 2 and just follow those steps, it is worth the under $9 to do this process a lot easier for you and your family. We'll drop a link down in the show notes, and we'll also give you plenty of ideas today as a free resource on the podcast.
Great.
All right, here we go.
Okay.
So the first part of planning your new year is reflecting on what went well in the past year. There's a book called Switch by Chip and Dan Heath. I believe it's in Switch. They wrote a variety of amazing books, including The Power of Moments, which I think is underappreciated. But in the book, they talk about finding bright spots that work. I've mentioned it on the podcast before, where you want to look at what went well in the past year. So what we teach is to put 5 minutes on a timer, and you treat it like a hot pen, which means you can't take the pen off the paper. You just got to keep it going. Just brain dump. Don't stop and think and then stop after 3 minutes. You got to go for the full 5 minutes and write down what went well this past year. Make it all about your personal life. You can make it work related if it affects your personal life, like you took a promotion or didn't take a promotion because you want to spend more time with your family. Whatever it is, you want to write it all out. Find all these bright spots, because bright spots are more easily repeatable because you've already done it than trying to do something new.
And we're going to do this during the Christmas break from school with our kids too. So just to make sure we apply this to family life, because so Everett's 5, he can write a little bit, but basically I probably would sit with him separately and do his list ahead of time. And then we're going to all sit together at some point during the break and have this meeting, like a family meeting, but an extended one for the end of year review essentially. And I want to hear from everybody at the table with what everyone's going to go through the hot pen technique, but I want to hear what everybody sees as bright spots from that year.
Perfect. There's the 5 minutes, bright spots. Share them around the table, get some momentum going. So we had the 5. Now it's the 10-minute hot pen. Put 10 minutes up on that timer, crank it up, and start brain dumping on everything you want to accomplish in the upcoming year. The bright spots set the tone. Don't skip those 5 minutes. They are critical. Like, it's just 5 minutes. Like, this is very important for your whole year to set this up right. And you don't want to start from a deficit thinking you've done nothing right this past year and getting over frustrated. There are things that were done well, so celebrate those. And now you let the rubber hit the road and you start writing down things. You can think about things you want to do this year but didn't quite get there, can go on that list, or just new ideas, and just brain dump for 10 minutes everything you want to accomplish in the upcoming year.
And this really is a huge piece of the goal setting system that we have as part of the Strong Family Path, because we sat down last year in January and we set up, each of our kids and us drew a picture of what we wanted to accomplish this year. So this is a great time to then reflect on, did I actually accomplish those things that I've been working towards all year? What might continue on into 2024? And then maybe you notice, and I think this is going to be a big piece of our meeting, is how our kids especially have changed this year, interests wise. So what might have been a goal for Logan, for example, at the beginning of the year, he's really developed this interest in 3D printing this year that wasn't even on his goal sheet at the beginning of the year. So you'll be able to see the changes in your kids over the year by doing this reflecting exercise.
So you're a total of 15 minutes in, not a lot of time. Now here's the next part. We got 5 minutes on the bright spots. We got 10 minutes on where you want to go. Then you're going to take a 15-minute break. 5, 10, 15. I recommend during that 15-minute break you go for a walk individually. And this lets you reflect on making sure that whatever you wrote down during the 10 minutes is everything that's on your mind. So take 15 minutes, go for a stroll, take a little break. I know you got some momentum going, but you do want to make sure that something doesn't come up 6 weeks from now and you don't think you can go back. You can go back and edit your list, but it's better to nip in the bud now and make sure it's all handled. So we got 15 minutes of work, then we got a 15-minute break. Sounds doable?
It does. And this is so important too, because it teaches kids that how to set goals, how to reflect on where you've been, and not just living in the moment all the time and like hoping for the best. So I think going through this exercise with kids, even though they might mumble and grumble about it a little bit, I think it shows them this pattern of how to set goals, how to reflect back, and then how to plan for a better year. And I think that is a skill that is not necessarily taught consistently in childhood.
If you want confident, successful children, let them be a part of a high-performance organization before they go out in the world. It may not exist in their school. It may not. This is an example of them participating in a major way in what's going to happen this year. That helps build their confidence. You teaching them how to set goals and how to reflect and how to look forward is going to empower them for the rest of their life. It is part of your legacy, this method. If you just do it behind closed doors and don't involve them, they will not understand the why behind it or the how. They're just going to feel like it's homework and they're not going to do a good job at it, and they'll start to resent these meetings. If you include them and you bring energy to it, it is something so powerful that they can carry forward, that they can use on their own as they get their own family started and in their careers. I already shared that we do it for business. We do it for family. Like, you got to stop, reflect, and then plan ahead, or else you're just going to be a piece of someone else's plan because you'll just get blown all over by every win that comes.
And they're going to see themselves as people of value. They need to see themselves that way. That's like the bedrock for resilience and confidence, is feeling like you have value. So we want to give our kids opportunities in this high-functioning organization that we call our family to show their value, to think about their value, to think about what kind of personal goals they have. It's not going to just be, oh, what mom and dad are going to tell me to do. No, it's about who you are, what you want to accomplish this year. And of course, we'll have some family goals, but we want them to start thinking about themselves as an individual and taking accountability and ownership over what they want to learn.
The last piece and the biggest piece, we've got 30 minutes into doing a little bit of brainstorming, a little bit of reflection, and a little bit of rest. You're going to ask everyone to share their list, and you write it down without judgment on a large sheet of paper, a whiteboard, something. Get everyone's list together, and so there's a little bit of conversation around it, even though they're just reading off their items. Then you're going to plan, you can keep that list and say, okay, this is where we can go in the full year. Where are we going to go in the next 90 days? It seems insurmountable to plan a year ahead. And that's why so many New Year's resolutions fail. They say, all right, by the end of this year, I'm going to accomplish X, Y, and Z. And it seems so far away that they just don't put any work into it on a daily basis to get there because they don't see it soon enough. And so you get everything down on a list, say what's most important to accomplish in the next 90 days. You look at the calendar, hey, if they're still in school, maybe it's going to be a little bit shorter on the kids' personal and family goals because they'll be very busy, and maybe in quarter 2 or quarter 3, as summertime rolls around, they can start to amp it up and do bigger things. You start to strategize and you list out 2 to 7 things that each person wants to accomplish in the next 90 days. 2 if it's big, 7 if it's small stuff.
And again, this helps focus. So whenever there's free time, or the kids, especially with the kids, I feel like if they don't know what to do with themselves, they can always refer back to their goals. What can I do to try to work towards this goal? And even for myself personally, we talked about this on a previous podcast, but we had our 90-day meeting almost 90 days ago, because we're going to have ours at the beginning of January. And I had this massive to-do list, and I would just feel overwhelmed all the time because I had no idea what was the most important. So we sat down and we spelled out, this is what's most important, these 3 to 4 things. So for the last 2.5 months, I have been much more focused because I took the time to figure out what's most important. And I think we can't just assume the kids will know what's most important. This might require some conversation. Like you mentioned, you'll have to look at the calendar because maybe you've got spring sports coming up. So there's things that you have to practically think about to make these goals achievable.
Perfect. And so you get your 90-day list, you have your year options, this big list. Then you knock it down to what's actually practical at this quarter, at this point of year, with the skills and the resources that we have. The reason why you want to make it practical is sometimes in business they'll teach like big, hairy, audacious goals and set something like so wild it makes your hair stand up. Okay, how about we actually get some things done first? So let's do some practical things. I hate that saying, oh, shoot for the star, the moon, you land amongst the stars. Okay, great. Like, how about you set your goal and like taking a step up the stairs first, and then maybe up the ladder. Then you want to go for airplane height, and then maybe you shoot for the moon. That nobody builds up the wins, and they just shoot so wildly, and they get so excited about talking about this big goal. That actually studied gives them a dopamine release, and they don't do a damn thing to accomplish it. They just love talking about it, and talking about it makes it feel good, and so they don't think they have to do it. So you actually have to make it practical. This is huge. I am a stickler for this. You have to set up some wins, because if you don't start getting some things done in quarter one, it affects your version of self, that you are not someone that can accomplish goals. I would rather see goals get crushed. I'll be like, oh, that was too easy. Then ramp up and do harder things in the second quarter or the third quarter or the fourth quarter, than setting up these wild goals that you'll never accomplish. You don't have any proven success yet. And then you flop and fail. And now you view yourself as someone who can't accomplish goals. And the rest of the year turns into just a steaming pile of crap.
This reminds me, speaking of steaming pile of crap, I'm reading this book called The Life Lessons from a Lion Tracker, something like that. And this made me think of it, because what they're saying in that book is you have to find one track. And then once you understand that track, then whatever you experience there will lead you to the next track. So you can't just think about the lion. You have to think about every step to get to the lion. And it's interesting, because they're like, now the lion must have laid down, and then it did this, and then it did that. But if you were just looking on like the far horizon for like where the goal is, you're going to lose your way, because you're not focusing on the tracks. So that's how I see what you're saying. Like, you have to do this piece, this practical piece right here. So if my goal is to read 5 books, how many pages do I have to read every day or every week or whatever? And then I accomplished, wow, for this week, I read 10 pages every day. And like that you said, that's like a little win. So that then sets you up for the next track, and then the next track. And I think it's important to see it that way. And you've also described this as like crossing a river. You have to throw in one stone at a time and then take the next step. You can't just jump in.
This is mind games, and it is important. Don't think we're above it. That, I'm so smart, I don't see this stuff coming. You could know this stuff is coming, and it still works. It works in business. It works for family. There's a great book called Influence by Robert Cialdini that's about these psychological persuasion techniques. And I believe it's in Influence, or a second book, where they talk about stamps on a car wash ticket. If you probably have seen it for like Subway and stuff, did the same thing. This was super popular in the 90s, early 2000s, where you'll get like a frequent flyer card, frequent purchaser card. And they found that if they hand you that card and stamp the first one at the same time, the compliance of completing that card goes up significantly than if they don't stamp it at all and hand it to you, because you have no wins on that card. Like, you have to establish some wins early. Set yourself up for some wins. It's coming. I'm telling you, this is supposed to be easy. You should knock this stuff out. However, it's still going to work to build momentum and start to shape the family life that you want. You got to start with these wins first, instead of just setting some audacious goal that you have no track record of doing anything towards, because it's going to be setting you up for failure.
And again, it takes it back to role modeling. We need to do this as adults to role model for our kids. And like Joe mentioned, we're not perfect. I'm struggling right now I've been trying to, just like in the healthier eating realm, and I oftentimes start something and then I don't, and then I like give up, and then I start and then I give up. And over time, I need to find a new plan to start getting those little wins, because I don't want to see myself as someone who just can't achieve it. I know that I can. I have in the past. It's just a matter of getting those little wins, even if it's something easy, like you said. You don't have to make the first step like some kind of enormous thing that you're basically setting yourself up for failure. You've got to get those little wins.
And so you get what you want your quarter ones, the first 3 months of the year, wins to be. Let the kids choose things that are a little bit more personal. They're not going to think as big family picture as you are. You can slide in one that's a little bit more family. Maybe it's to establish the morning routine and get their help along the way. That's part of the Strong Family Path I mentioned earlier, and use those resources I mentioned earlier. We'll drop them in the show notes. However, a lot of them need to be individual so that they can build those quick wins. And part of the reason why setting it up for 90 days is now every week during your family meeting, just choose a Saturday at dinner if you don't have family meeting established yet. Again, another step of the Strong Family Path, resources for you down in the description. But if you have your family meeting, check in. Like, how are you doing on your goals? And they can just give you a little update. And so you go quarter by quarter. Now, one more thing I want to mention is that it is good to have a couple of those annual goals. I mentioned those as the far-fetched bigger things because you have a whole year to work towards it, but you can't just have those because there'll be no momentum. What we do for our annual goals, and perhaps we'll do a podcast and We've done it on how we set them, but how we did on them. And so to make it memorable, the kids sit down and they draw a picture of everything they want to accomplish. So after you set your first quarter goals, you build wins, you set perspective, now's the time to sit down and say, what do you want to accomplish by the end of the year? And just draw it out in some pictures. And we have those pictures hanging above our dining room table so that they are still part of omnipresence. The kids see them throughout the day.
And then every Saturday at our family meeting is when we set up those weekly commitments to work towards those annual goals. So it's always having it top of mind once a week. And then actually every day, to the best of our ability, we reflect on it. We say, did you achieve your weekly commitment for today? Did you do it? And like this past week, Logan's was to run up our driveway 3 times. It's a steep driveway. And then sometimes he's doing it in the dark in the evening because he didn't do it earlier in the day. So it's just a way to stay accountable, stay thinking about those goals, because it's easy to just forget about them if you're not bringing it up constantly.
Okay, so you have the system in place to set up your annual goals, and even we briefly talked about how to do the pictures for the annual goals. But what's important is to hit the bright spots, reflect where you want to go for the year, and then what are you going to do the next 90 days to move yourself there. Absolutely critical steps. Now, I'm going to let Mel speak on this so we can finish up the episode. We're closing in on the 30 minutes, which is, should you expect it to be perfect all the time? What happens when something goes wrong, Mel?
Freak out. No, don't freak out. So this occurred to me as I was listening to a little bit of Vince, our friend Vince, speaking about this in the business realm. But this really connects with family living. So I have this idea in my mind that if I just do all the right things, if I set my goals, if I accomplish, or if I just consistently have routines with the kids, there will come a time when everyone will just be great. Everyone will just have everything figured out, and we'll have this lovely, I don't want to say plateau, but like lovely like place that we get to that we're just cruising. And I realized that's stupid because I think it's naive to think that there won't always be some kind of problem or issue to handle. So my reflection is more of a mindset shift. I want to start thinking about family living, not as one problem after another, but have the healthy perspective that there will always be some kind of issue. Kids change. Our kids are now, we have 2 that are teen, preteen, and they do start to behave differently. They do start to show different aspects of personality. They do become more independent, and it throws me for a loop sometimes because I'm just used to the little 5-year-old is more my pace. But my point is, I don't want to be surprised when there's things always coming up. I want to expect that and be prepared for that to the best of my ability and not think that things are falling apart just because I don't have everything figured out all the time. So as you're setting the goals for the year, as you're thinking about the year ahead, everyone could say, let's have the best year ever. And I hope that's the case, but there's still going to be roadblocks, even if you're having the best year ever. And sometimes out of those roadblocks can come the most growth. So just to summarize, I think it's important that we have a mindset of understanding that in family life, there will always be some kind of issue to handle, and that's normal, and that's expected, and that's okay. And I'm not saying everyone's always going to have a crisis. I simply mean that there are always going to be challenges. And I think I had to shift my perspective, and this just hit me like yesterday. Like, when are things just going to be smooth all the time? They're not going to be smooth all the time. And that's okay. That's the colorful living of family life. So I wanted to share that in case that touched any of you, or if that resonates with you or your situation where you're at.
I'm going to give you the worst marketing for the Strong Family Guidebook. You could follow all the steps and you're still going to run into speed bumps and you're still going to run into issues. It would be a bold-faced lie for us to say, if you follow these steps, you'll live like a happy life forever. Just like one of those marketing websites, you do this and they have a picture of these family dancing in the rain. The world's going to be perfect. In reality, that's not going to happen. Instead, you're going to have the ability to solve the problems when they come up. You're going to have a mindset and a framework to work with, because it would be absolutely naive to say you're not going to have any problems. It's going to be perfect. And it would be detrimental. It would be hurtful for us to tell you that if you follow this strategy perfectly, your next year is going to be flawless. You don't want that, because if you're not having that friction and you're not growing, you're
freaking out.
If you're not growing, you're dying. I was going to see if Mel knew a saying, but she never does. So that's quite all right. So we want to set this and this expectation and almost anticipation for when something goes wrong, you can handle it. You should not expect things to be perfect. I once heard recently entrepreneurship described as a business, it's a personal development journey. What am I trying to say here, Melly? I shouldn't expect a personal development journey disguised as a business. Now, this family journey, it's a personal development journey disguised as family planning. You're going to have to grow through this process, and growth takes some friction. You're going to hit some walls, and you're going to have to lean back and look at the family planning, take a deep breath, stay calm, and keep working towards those goals in the big picture. This will help narrow your frame of reference on what you want to accomplish in this year. It's not going to make it perfect. It shouldn't be perfect. You don't want it to be perfect because there is no growth in that experience.
But this is what makes the Strong Family path like magical to me. Because even if things come up, new twists and turns that I did not anticipate, even if I know there's going to be challenges, I don't necessarily know what they're going to be, I can fall back and lean on the infrastructure that we've created. The structure of the morning meeting, especially like the evening debrief when I talk to my older two for in the evening. Gosh, stuff like this year, so much has come up in that time. And I can't imagine having not had that time for them to talk to me. Even if sometimes I leave the room and think, okay, here's a new challenge I have to think about and handle. If I didn't have that structure in place, if Joe and I didn't intentionally find time for each other to talk, I would likely fall apart. And sometimes I do, because there's been a lot of change this year and new challenges for me as a mother. So I think my point really is that if you set up the Strong Family path, if you take the time to put these different elements in place, when things become more challenging, you have something to fall back on. You have a strategy and a plan. And I think that is powerful.
So here's where I want you to go from here. You can either stop the episode, take the notes you've been handwriting down and start to try to implement it. Or if you want some additional support and resources to make it way smoother on you, go to Amazon, type in Strong Family Guidebook. We made it $9, so it's essentially the cost of printing and shipping, and that's so you can get your hands on it and you have the framework and our notes to make this process a lot easier. Either way, it's cool with us because what we're trying to do is empower families, and what success looks like to us is that people implement the method and they actually start next year with a game plan. So either way, take the approach, take some action on it. What I don't want to happen is for you to stop this podcast and do nothing. That would be the worst case situation. If you need help, drop us a comment. Visit us at strongfamilyproject.com. Shoot us an email, and we'll be happy to answer your questions on a future episode. Talk to you on the next